Ryomen Sukuna is quite clearly known for his dominance in Jujutsu Kaisen, having murdered an immeasurable amount of people for his own satisfaction. Right now he is taking on the Satoru Gojo, going back and forth with a battle of domains, but a certain summoned honored one moment is right around the corner. I believe Yuji Itadori is going to steal Sukuna's soul in the most unexpected fashion, and here is how.
今まで俺の口から出た言葉は全て嘘だったんじゃないかと思えるくらい腹の底から出た本音ぶっ殺してやる。
Throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, the unstable connection between Yuji Itadori and Ryomen Sukuna is what fascinates a lot of us. Both have completely different mindsets and experiences. One is just an innocent high schooler whose goal is to help those in need and allow the ones closest to him to die in the best way possible. Whereas Ryomen Sukuna, the king of all curses, would be the one that distributes the worst ways to die. He's a master of destruction and chaos, killing off innocent lives without a care in the world. These opposing ideologies is what makes both Yuji and Sukuna much closer than we thought. It's like the saying, opposites attract. Although Sukuna had an immense hatred for Yuji and completely looked down on him, I guess you could say it allowed Sukuna to view things in the perspective of Yuji and truly understand how his mind works. Anyways, we all know how much inspiration Akutami takes from Buddhism and Japanese folklore in order to shape the direction of Jujutsu Kaisen and its characters, or more specifically Ryomen Sukuna. I've discussed this with you guys over a million times now, but there's one theory I'd like us to refer to, and that would be the original legend concerning the conjoined twins. I made a video about this almost a year ago, about how Sukuna was unsealed in 2005, so if you'd like to know more, I'll leave the link in the description below. Anywho, a quick summary of what I had mentioned before was about a story concerning a sick and twisted cult leader during the Taisho period, known as Mononobe Tengoku. He had purchased conjoined twins from a quote-unquote freak show and praised them as their deity. This cult that he had led had a goal of ultimately destroying Japan. He even used a Kodoku ritual, which we were recently revealed to in the JJK manga, but performed this ritual on actual humans with deformities. The conjoined twins would survive this ordeal, but Mononobe Tengoku would go on to mummify them and place them inside of a box like a coffin, all sealed up. He would carry around this cursed object, and it was said to have been the cause of various natural disasters which claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands. This legend stems from the Iwate Prefecture, which would be where Akutami is from. Now, with that short summary out of the way, what exactly does this have to do with Yuji stealing Sukuna's soul? There has been immense speculation about who Yuji truly is, and what his purpose is as well. This all falls into place with the legend we had just gone through, but before we keep it moving, I like to give credit to Kyle Breeze on this one, who inspired this video. Be sure to check him out, he makes incredible theories. I'll leave the link to his channel down below. Back to where we were, this cult leader known as Mononobe Tengoku would inspire the character of Kenjaku, both sharing a similar ideology of destroying Japan. Mononobe's one being literal, whereas Kenjaku's would be more so along the lines of destroying the current Japan and implementing a whole different world. Moving on, these conjoined twins from the legend would partly inspire Ryomen Sukuna. The other legend would be from the Nihon Shoki, where Sukuna appeared to have 2 heads and 4 arms. So what we already understand is that the theme of twins is prevalent in both aspects of Sukuna's inspiration. The symbolism of twins throughout the world is a complicated one. Some cultures mention how it is a representation of good luck, other cultures see it as a bad omen. For this part right here, let's head towards the direction of Japanese symbolism concerning twins. So in Japanese culture, twins have long been associated with a belief in bad luck. This belief stems from ancient customs and traditions, giving rise to superstitions and negative associations. Twins were seen as harbingers of misfortune, believed to bring death omens, marital discord, business failure, and health issues. To counteract this perceived bad luck, rituals like Kanreki celebrations, Omamori charms, and purification rituals were performed. This perception of twins comes from old Japanese traditions, but we still see that it's still something which is frowned upon in the modern world of Jujutsu. For example, Maki and Mai. It would be in chapter 149, where we would get the true answer as to why twins were looked down upon, During Mai and Maki's conversation, Mai would state, "I knew a long time ago why twins were inauspicious for sorcerers. To gain something, you must offer something, and I'm not just talking about a binding vow. In the same way suffering makes us stronger, for us twins, that rule doesn't apply. After all, curse techniques treat identical twins as one individual. Get it? You are me and I am you." Mai would go on to explain that as long as she is around, Maki would never fully develop and reach her truest and most powerful potential. And in the end, Maki would inherit all of the cursed energy from Mai and totally obliterate the Zenin clan. I hope you guys are still with me on this one. So back to the original form of Ryomen Sukuna. Like I mentioned in the Japanese myth, we had seen him with 2 faces and 4 arms, and in the urban legend, Ryomen Sukuna was seen to be as conjoined twins. This brings us back full circle. If Akutami did indeed base Kenjaku off of the cult leader Mononobe Tengoku, then surely he had based his own Ryomen Sukuna from the urban legend about the conjoined twins. My prediction is that Ryomen Sukuna is not just one person, but he is in fact 2 people, or should I say twins. So with that all said, and the idea of twins understood to a better extent, what role does the soul have to play in all of this? The discussion about the soul in Jujutsu Kaisen is a massive one. Not only does it have its readers theorizing it, but it even has the characters speculating what it could mean. Since we love to dive deep on JJK lore, let's go all the way back and truly understand what the soul means and how much of a significant role it plays in the world of Jujutsu. The earliest concept about the soul which is explained to us would be in chapter 21, where Mahito breaks down how he views a human's heart. Mahito asks Junpei if humans have a heart, to which Mahito simply says they do not. This leaves Junpei all confused. Mahito states, "They have souls, but that's different from the heart." He carries on by saying, "Emotions come from the soul, it's too simplistic to call it heart. People overthink things they can't see. I can see the soul, so for me it's nothing special. It's practically the same as the human body, it just exists." So what we can take from this is the idea of the heart, which is constantly put into speech marks by Mahito. To him, its significance isn't quite as big as we think. For him, the soul is the heart, since he is a cursed spirit after all. Many emotions come from the soul, which is understandable why Mahito views the soul as something far greater, because at the end of the day, he is created from negative emotions. Emotions are what creates energy, but in this case negative emotions would create cursed energy as explained by Megami in chapter 1. So this all comes from the soul, but Mahito's conversation with Junpei, I would like us to also keep the idea of heart stored somewhere in our heads, because it'll link us to something bigger in this theory. Taking a few steps back from chapter 21 all the way to chapter 11, this would be when Yuji is stuck inside of Sukuna's quote-unquote innate domain. After Yuji was ruled to be officially dead, he finds himself staring up at Sukuna's throne of skulls as Sukuna looks down in amusement. Prior to all of this, we witness Sukuna ripping out the heart from Yuji's body, which would be needed for Yuji to keep on living. Now the question would be, how in the world did Yuji come back to life? For this, chapter 11 is pivotal to the grand scheme of things. During their mini bout, as Sukuna sits on him, he tells Yuji that they are inside of his innate domain. He goes on to state, "We're not dead yet. Think of it as being inside the heart. In other words, if you accept my terms, I'll fix your heart and revive you." So Sukuna claims that they are inside the heart, but he only said that to dumb things down for Yuji. They were actually inside of Sukuna's soul. So if that's the case with Yuji not even having a physical heart to begin with, then one of the factors would be that the physical heart is not necessarily needed to come back to life. Anyways, we see many times of souls meeting, for example Mahito and Sukuna. Mahito managed to enter Sukuna's soul, but had his soul attacked and weakened by him. Since Mahito's existence and curse technique allows him to alter the soul, only himself and Yuji have ever been able to enter this sacred place inside of Sukuna.
俺の魂に触れるか。分をわきまえろ。知れ者が。
So this innate domain would simply be the soul in its purest form, and I would say the most vulnerable place to enter, since the meetings which took place were between souls and not the physical body. Affecting the soul would affect the body. With that being mentioned, let's turn it up a notch and head all the way to chapter 91, when Gojo was on the brink of being sealed inside of the prison realm. We learned how Kenjaku's curse technique was to hop from body to body and be able to use that person's curse technique. Well, for him, when Gojo called out for Geto, Kenjaku's body reacted differently. We had actually witnessed Geto fighting from within, regardless of him having a completely different brain, which could control every aspect of his body. Geto would use his right arm to strangle Kenjaku, and it wouldn't be just for an instance. Kenjaku would need to use force to hold back the arm until Gojo was completely sealed. Kenjaku then tells Mahito, "You theorize that the soul came before the body, but the body is the soul and the soul the body. Otherwise, this phenomenon of the body's memories entering my mind, even after changing hosts, can't be explained." Mahito asks, "Does it have to be the same for everyone? Considering our jujutsu techniques, you and I practically live in different worlds." To which Kenjaku establishes that their curse techniques dictates both their wills and how they both perceive the soul. This then gives us an ultimatum that the soul and body play a much greater part than the brain and the heart. Anyways, from what I see, the body and soul would be twins, both coincide with each other in the world of Jujutsu. We are slowly starting to see the bigger picture. Souls are the most important thing in the world of JJK, but it would be in chapter 31 where Mahito would get a harsh realization and say out loud that Sukuna's soul is on another level. As for how powerful a soul could become is unknown to us, but it dictates how powerful you could become physically. Mastering the soul gives infinite possibilities for the body. So how will Yuji steal Sukuna's soul? From what we've uncovered so far is that the concept of twins plays a prevalent role in the JJK universe, as well as the soul and body acting as twins with both coinciding with each other. It's 100% plausible to say that as long as the soul or body is intact, if one's body is taken over by another being, it can indeed be taken back. Why would I say something so bold? Well, take a look at Toji during the Shibuya incident arc. He managed to override Ogami's curse technique and experience life again, regardless of him being hardwired to just kill. In the last few moments that he was around, Toji became living proof that as long as the body is still there, the soul would reignite, ultimately allowing Toji to ask questions and kill himself right before his son. Although it was momentarily, incarnation and reincarnation are two powerful notions, but what do these both mean and how do they relate to the world of Jujutsu? I mentioned before how Akutami has always taken a big inspiration from Buddhist symbolism. Well, the theme of incarnation and reincarnation has always been around in the manga. Incarnation means an old soul inside an already developed and grown body, which is normally possessed by another being. The previous owner of the body lost his control to the new one. We see incarnations happen with all the sorcerers from 1,000 years ago, with Kenjaku finding and manipulating suitable vessels through creating binding vows. This created the likes of Yorozu, Uro Takako, Ryu Ishigori, Hajime Kashimo, and plenty more. As for the meaning of reincarnation, this is an old soul inside of a newborn body, developing everything from scratch. There is no previous owner of the body. There's yet to be any character in Jujutsu Kaisen to have been reincarnated, or is there? So who or what could Yuji be? Well, he is the twin of Ryomen's Sukuna.
Huh?
I understand that so far this theory has taken a lot of twists and turns, but just hear me out. In chapter 220, with Hanakurusu and the angel recovering, Yuta asks the angel if it is possible for them to transfer into different bodies. The angel tells Yuta that it is simply impossible for her and the other sorcerers who had been incarnated to do so. However, she goes on to say that Sukuna is different and states, after experiencing death once, he most likely stumbled on a way to split his soul as cursed items. What we all know is that Sukuna dispersed his very own soul into 20 different cursed fingers which were part of his own body. But Uraume confesses that she hasn't been able to find the final cursed finger for Sukuna to consume, and claims that it is in Gojo's possession. This part right here is all credit to Liv. I'll leave the link to her Twitter and channel down below. Anyways, Liv says Kenjaku used Kaori's curse technique to create a domain out of his own body. If he did the same with Yuji and consumed a finger, we could think a fetal Yuji being soaked in his type of amniotic bath. So why exactly would Kenjaku go to such lengths for Yuji? It all comes down to reincarnation. Kenjaku may have been successful with the incarnation of other sorcerers, but the concept of reincarnation was too hard for him to grasp and legitimately pull off. Kenjaku created Yuji with the sole purpose to reincarnate the twin of Ryomen Sukuna, thus feeding the fetus of Yuji the final cursed finger. I hope you guys are still with me on this one. so the current Sukuna that we are seeing facing off against Gojo is only 50% of the true and purest form of the king of all curses. This now takes us to the true form of Ryomen's Sukuna, the 100%. It all comes down to the twins now becoming one. When Yuji had faced off against Mahito's final form in chapter 130, Mahito goes on to say, "I finally understand my true unbridled soul." Yuji in his head says, "Could it be? He's already a cursed spirit. He's becoming something completely different than before his transformation." Mahito, I would say, is the only one besides Sukuna to have entered this state. He claims to have understood his true unbridled soul, in other words meaning a soul in its purest and uncontained form. So if we put 2 and 2 together, if Ryomen's Sukuna is said to have a twin, through the same instance as Mai and Maki, this must have opened a gateway for Sukuna to turn into his most powerful form, a soul with no restrictions whatsoever. Now back to the main timeline, chapter 220 would have Yuji say how he has now become like a cursed object which was soaked in cursed energy known as Sukuna. In this same chapter, Yuji would be given an entire data analysis book about souls made by Yuki, given to him by Choso. But it wouldn't be until chapter 222 where we would be revealed to something massive, and that is Yuji inhabiting the body of Kusakabe, with Kusakabe telling Yuji that it's time for him to get a handle on this. Yuki's research is very similar to Kenjaku's. Although both have opposing ideas, it's like they share the same intelligence and brain. The data found in the notebook may have been an indirect research into Yuji himself. The idea of souls, cursed wombs, and incarnations all stem from Ryomen's Sukuna and his twin. From what we saw is that both bodies had switched, Yuji inhabiting Kusakabe and vice versa. But from all the research we had done about the soul and the body, we know full well that as long as the body is around, it can overpower whatever's taking control. If Yuji were to use his soul swapping ability on someone as simple as Choso, they would just switch bodies. But I reckon if Yuji were to do it with Sukuna, they would end up inside of the heart. Or should I say Sukuna's soul? This is where it would be make or break for both Sukuna and Yuji. Now on the basis that Yuji is Sukuna's twin, I believe Yuji will attempt to battle against Sukuna inside of his soul, but struggle immensely. Sukuna will then enter part of his final form whilst trying to consume Yuji's soul. But that wouldn't mean the end of Yuji. It will all come down to the will of the soul and how strong it is. Sukuna may enter his final form, but I see Yuji trying his best to hold it back, leading to the ultimate sacrifice. But for all this to happen, Yuji must somehow drag Sukuna back into his own body, and I see this only happening if Megami gains the strength to force Sukuna out. This could then cause Sukuna to enter Yuji's body again in desperation. The battle on the outside will be completely different to the battle on the inside. Yuji will be fighting Sukuna inside his innate domain, whilst the rest of the sorcerers tried to hold back Sukuna's final form. So then what do I mean by Yuji stealing Sukuna's soul? That all comes down to the endgame of Jujutsu Kaisen. There are 2 alternatives in this battle and how it ends. Either Yuji dies or he lives. If Akutami has a change of heart, then I reckon the only way for Yuji to survive is to become one with Sukuna's soul. That's only if Yuji is indeed Sukuna's twin. So what does Kenjaku gain from this? He would gain the full form of Ryomen's Sukuna. This would become the catalyst for humanity, being pushed and forced into the new world, a world filled with curses. I know that this was a tedious theory. There are going to be an insane amount of questions about this video, but it all relies on whether Yuji is the twin of Sukuna. If he is not the twin of Sukuna, then this theory holds no value. But what did you guys think? I'd love to get your guys' input on this. If I had missed out any key details that could either make or break this theory, be sure to let me know. Also, what's your take on Yuji being the twin of Sukuna? For me it makes sense, but let me know what you guys think down below. As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next one.